yeah? So guys, yeah, I want to do one more video on factorizing quadratics. And, you know, I mean, I went through why factorizing is kind of taught in the first place, because it's taught for you to solve equations like this, you know. So you get questions like solve x squared minus 18x plus 32 equals 0. Now you've got to understand, remember, like, and if you've kind of gone through the introduction, this should make a lot more sense to you. But here's the deal, like, that's a very different question to when you're asked to factorize x squared minus 18x plus 32, which, by the way, factorizes the x minus 16, x minus 2. I'm not going to bother showing you how I did that factorization. You guys should be very comfortable. So yeah, this, as I kind of like go over again, this is like, that's a rewrite question. This style of question is a rewrite question. Whereas this is the one where you're trying to find something you don't know. Make sense? So here's what the situation, this one is trying to this one wants you to find the x, which if you square, take away 18 lots of it, and then add 32 to whatever that comes out to, ends up equaling zeros. This is like, find me the x question, whereas this is just like, look, rewrite this in 2 brackets. So the way, you know, the way this actually works, the way you solve this, is you basically, so let's back up a sec. So here's the situation we're at with this question. Do you remember how it's always a scales if you see an equal sign? Yeah. So can you see, like, obviously this is really tough when you've got an x squared here and x. You can try it if you want to actually you know, it's difficult to go straight from here to x like we tried to with the other earlier questions. So that's why and I'll show you, factorizing helps you still solve this. So what you do is you take this whole bit here, the actual quadratic part, and you say, well, I know a different way to write it. And you say, all right, well, instead of writing it this way, I'm going to write it this way. Now that's far more useful to you because of this little trick. You've got 2 things multiplying. You've got this first bracket multiplying by this other bracket, and you're trying to make these 2 brackets multiply together to give you 0. And this is why you want the other side to equal 0. Because the beauty about 0 is, when you're trying to multiply 2 things together to make it equal to 0, is if you can just get this first bracket to equal 0, then imagine, you don't even care what this bracket equals. So it just literally becomes 0 times something, which obviously is going to give you 0. So that's why you always want everything to equal to 0. If, for example, this was equal to 2, I can't make this equal to 2 because it matters what this one equals. Because 2 times something, you know, depending what that something is, the value changes, but 0 is beautiful like that. 0 doesn't matter what the other thing you're multiplying by, it stays to 0. That's why it's essential you make the other side equal to 0. And then, you know, it's just a case of you just having a look at this one bracket, not this whole side, and just thinking, all right, what value would make this, what value of x would make this bracket equal to 0? And for a lot of you, it should be pretty simple to see that it's obviously 16, because 16 minus 16 equals 0. But if you didn't know, you can actually just write it out like this. Think, all right, I've got x minus 16, and make a mini equation. Say, I want to find the x that makes just this little thing equal 0. Obviously, like, yeah, you're not going to need to do that. So why am I even bothering to explain something so simple to you? Simply because people get to situations like this, yeah? And, you know, when they do that, they're very happy that this bracket, the x that makes this one equal 0, is 5. But they fall into the trap of just looking at that and thinking, oh yeah, there's a minus 1, so the answer is plus 1. That's not how it works. You're trying to find the x that makes this whole bracket equal 0. You're not just looking at the opposite number to this. That's how when you like learn rules, you screw things up. if you understand that you're trying to make this whole bracket equal to 0, then you will immediately see that 2 times 1 is 2, and if you take away 1, that equals 1. This bracket would equal 1 with x equals 1. So that's why, the right answer is actually a half. Half times 2 equals 1. Take away 1. 1 take away 1 is 0. So the way you can do that is you make a mini equation, because you're trying to make this bracket equal to 0. Literally, you're trying to make the bracket, which is 2x minus 1, equal to 0. And then you can literally just rearrange the equation to find that particular x. So that's why I kind of go through it. So yeah, so look, you do it like that. And on the flip side, I kind of showed you in that last one anyway, you also could try make this bracket equal to 0, and you wouldn't care what this one is. So you also care about this value, the x which will make this bracket equal to 0. And as you can see, that would be x equals 2. So these are your two, solutions. And remember, quadratics, most of the time, virtually almost all the time, have two answers. Yeah? The only time you get one answer is if you run into a situation like this. So you would have had, say you had an equation like this. Yeah? So you factorize that thing to that. Now think about this. Which x makes this bracket equal to 0? It's x equals 4. What x makes this equal to 0? It's also 4. So obviously you've just got the exact same answer twice. So in reality that's just one answer. But most of the time you get two different answers. And remember, look, the whole point of this question it wasn't to factorize it. Yeah? You use the factorizing to find your two answers. The question in the first place, which is just this bit, is just literally saying, find me the x that makes this whole thing work. And look, we can check. We'll see that 2 works. So we can think about this. 2 squared minus 18 times 2 plus 32. That's 4 minus 36 plus 32. Stick that in a calculator if you need to. That equals 0. Okay? So this one is definitely right. And it's worth checking if you can as well, especially if you've got time. Second one, this one's a little bit harder to check, especially on a non-calculator paper. Because, 16 squared, I'll be honest with you, I've got a bit of a confession. I actually don't know it off the top of my head. Alright, so, you can consult the calculator, but I assure you it's going to be correct. So we've got 256 minus 288 plus 32. Put that into the calculator, yeah, that equals 0. So yeah, that's how this question works. I'll run you through a few more, a little bit more commentary, same kind of commentary. But that's really the last point I want to drill into you. Let's have a look at this. So this question actually almost even leads you through it. And these are exam questions, by the way, which I'm going through. I even went through exam questions whilst I was actually showing you how to do this stuff. So I always generally tend to use exam questions. I don't really care for these textbook questions and stuff, because all I care is you get the best mark you can on your exam, not some revision sheet. So this one was a 2-part thing. This one said factorize y squared minus 5y minus 6. Then it goes hence or otherwise, yeah. It said solve y squared minus 5y minus 5 equals 1. Right, so that's an interesting one, because whenever you see hence, yeah, what they're saying is whatever you've done just in that first part, we're giving you a hint. You should use that, mate. You should use that. And here's it is. So like part A, if you're kind of comfy with this, you factorize it by doing y minus 6, y plus 1, right? So there, you should know how to do that by watching the videos. Pause it, try do it. B is more interesting. It said it's hence, so you want to kind of use this. Now, a lot of people would look at that, scratching their heads, thinking, okay, right, I need to factorize this. That's wrong. From the get-go, that's wrong, because remember, if you're trying to solve a equation with a quadratic, you've got to make the other side equal 0. And it's incredibly easy to do. So look, the other side is equal to 1. Remember, whenever you've seen equal sign, you're dealing with this. What's it called? The scales. So look, you want to make this side equal to 0. There's 1 there already. Take away 1 from this side. And obviously, because you've taken away 1 from this side, to keep the balance, you've got to take away 1 from there. This will give you y squared minus 5y minus 6 equal to 0. Now, do you see? You don't have a now. Remember, the first, you know what this bit factorizes to. Yeah, so you do that. Yeah? And then you're at that, then you've pretty much done. You've got to the point where you've got two things multiplying to give you 0. So you just decide what y would make that one equal 0, because it doesn't matter what that equals, 0 times anything. Yeah, that's going to be y equals 6. And similarly for that, you can make that 0. You won't care what that equals. That equals y equals minus 1. So probably wrap up with one more. Alright, so give me a second. Yep. Alright, so this one says solve 3x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 0, and it says solve by factorization. So this is actually quite interesting, because obviously, because this is a quadratic equation, quadratic equation, you could have used the quadratic formula if you wanted to for this. Normally, you could have also, I haven't shown you how yet, you could have tried doing it by completing the square. I definitely wouldn't do it with completing the square for this one, that's for sure. Or you could have done it by factorization. But sometimes the question will force you to do it one way or another. So that's why you have to know each way. They all work. I mean, you can't factorize everything. You have to know the quadratic formula. But yeah, so for this one, they're saying you've got to do it by factorization. Well, it starts off nice anyway, it's equal to 0. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rewrite that so we can actually solve this thing, because this is not, in this way you can't. So remember, it's going to factor x to 3x plus a, x plus b. We're going to do our thing. We're going to get our two equations. We're going to get a times b equaling minus 12, not plus 12. And we're going to have a plus 3b equaling 5. Remember? Now let's kind of consider all the possible a times b's. Yeah, so we could have had 1 minus 12. Remember, because it's 3x and x, we have to we're in that annoying situation where you've got to consider more. You're going to consider what you would have thought was just its opposite, but it's turned into 4 things. Very annoying question this, as you can see, because there's quite a few different combinations of this. I actually have to keep going, because I can do 3 times 4 as well. Just squeeze this in. There you go. So that's that. So I've done the table. Remember, I'm interested in 3a plus 3b. Terrible line. Much better line. Kind of do it try to do it side by side a little bit. Yeah, probably worth doing it side by side so you don't mess up. But obviously, as long as you've got some sense, you won't mess up, hopefully. Okay, so remember, this should be 3b, by the way, because we're interested in a plus 3b. Now multiply the other side by 3. Look, you're just looking for the one where you can, as you're kind of going along, you should be adding along for the one which adds to 5. So minus, this is minus 35. Minus 3, minus 12. How much are we doing? 18 minus 18. Sorry. That should be 12. Why am I screwing this up? Sorry, I'm just switched off my brain completely here. And I seem to be having problems multiplying by 3, which is not good. Alright, so we got that one. We got 18 minus 6 minus 12. Got 12. No, we got 9. What am I talking about? Yeah, and that's actually the one. Right? And and that's the thing, so you want to keep adding along. So the answer is this one. There wasn't it? A equals minus 1, B equals 3. So this factorized is 3x minus 4. So hopefully you've learned a little lesson from me to, pay attention when you do these, because these can get pretty tedious. And once from here, remember, this is the easy one to do. Which x will make that bracket equal to 0. This will be x equals minus 3. This one be a little bit more careful, alright? And I recommend you make a mini equation, because you're just trying to make 3x minus 4 equal to 0. Then just rearrange that as normal. So you get 3x equals 4. So you now divide each side by 3. And that's it. X equals 4 over 3. Don't bother trying to get that as a decimal or anything like that. You don't need to. Don't bother trying to make that into a mixed fraction. Remember, don't give mixed fractions if they don't ask for mixed fractions. Just make sure you give your answer as a fraction and it's simplified as much as possible. Right? So that, fingers crossed unless I change my mind again, that wraps up quadratic, what's the thing? You know what the thing is, right? What's the thing? That wraps up quadratics. Now we're going to complete the square.